Hello and welcome everybody. My name is Mario, and today's lesson will be getting an overview of the history of type. Now throughout the lesson feel free to stop, rewind, and fast forward as you see fit. So let's get started. In this lesson you'll learn the chronological development of type families, the historical and present day use of type families, and the physical characteristics that help us identify those type families. The key terms for this lesson are black letter, old style, transitional, modern, Egyptian, and Bauhaus. Now in this lesson we're going to be diving into the chronological development of type as another way to classify type families into groups or classifications. Now, although some of the type families date as far back as the 1400s, all of these are in use today and continue to be refined, developed, and are available in several different versions from different publishers today. So as an example, Garamond is a typeface belonging to the Old Style group. It was originally developed by Claude Garamond in the 1540s. This was revisited in 1975 by Tony Stan with revisions associated with the International Typeface Corporation, or ITC. Now it's difficult to spot at first glance here, but the revisions include an increase in X height, wider weight, and slightly more condensed width. In 1984, Apple added their own variant, opting for narrower and taller X height. Now the differences are subtle, but we'll dive into the characteristics that help us identify the differences in each one of these. So let's jump into the type family groups or classifications. This figure shows a chronological timeline of the type family classifications. Now these groups or classifications roughly coincide with movements in history, art, and literature. And we'll be looking at each type family individually and identifying them by their physical characteristics. So starting off with black letter. Black letter typefaces are a script style of calligraphy popular in the 1400s all the way throughout the 1900s. It was popularized in Germany and used throughout Europe throughout the Renaissance even. Now most people think of this typeface as medieval, Gothic, or Old English lettering. You'll often see this typeface with ornate capitals, roughly diamond-shaped serifs and thick lines. So here note the overall weight of the typeface, the contrast between the thick and thin strokes, and the thin serifs on the lowercase letters. Now because these typefaces are difficult to read in large bodies of text, they're generally best suited to headings, logos, posters, signs, and of course certificates and diplomas. So the old style typefaces were developed in the 15th and 16th centuries when scribes used quills to create letter forms. And as a result, the relation to calligraphy is apparent in their moderate contrast between thick and thin strokes, slanted serifs on lowercase letters, and a diagonal stress that's visible if you draw a line through the thinnest part of the letters. Now if you look closely, you'll also notice that the serifs are also bracketed, which is to say that they're rounded to join the base of the letter. Now old style typefaces are often considered best for large amounts of body of text, and you'll find them used heavily today in magazines, books, and newspapers. So transitional is named for its intermediate position bridging the gap between the old style and what will become the modern. Now distinguishing features of this typeface include more vertical stress, sharper serifs, and a slightly higher contrast. Later transitional typefaces move towards more accentuated contrast and more flattened serifs that shift towards the modern type, which we'll take a look at next. So the modern typefaces were a radical shift from the traditional typography that we've seen up until this point in time. They were developed in the late 18th and early 19th centuries, and the change reflected advances in technology and cultural influences. These modern typefaces have a striking appearance with their bold contrast between thick and thin strokes, the vertical stress, and their thin serifs. Now, striking as the modern typefaces are, they're not very suitable for extensive text work, like books or magazines. As time progressed and the Industrial Revolution ramped up, there was a greater need for new typefaces for use in advertising for large posters, billboards, flyers, and more. So boosting visibility became a focus of the design, which is indicated in the vertical stress, thick and horizontal unbracketed serifs with no contrast, and an overall darker appearance due to thick weight and solid strokes, all again for visibility. Now make note again here of the difference between the bracketed serifs and unbracketed. Now sans serif, as the name implies, is just that. It's a typeface without serifs. Sans meaning without in French is a simple distinction for this typeface. The sans serif typeface is almost always monoweight, which is another way of saying it has no stress because of the lack of thick and thin transition in strokes, and of course no serifs. Although the typeface was developed before the age of computers, it remains one of the most legible to use for computer screens and monitors, and is fairly popular as a result. Now, the Bauhaus typeface came from a time of dramatic change. Between two world wars, an academy of art called Bauhaus emerged that promoted modernism that had quite a profound influence on the 20th century design. This typeface is very streamlined compared to the others and utilizes modest curves, no contrast between the strokes, no serifs, and mirrored aesthetics and a simplistic design that often involved the removal of any ornamentation, again the serifs, and oftentimes even capital letters. And Bauhaus maintains much of the progressive design today, and it's very visible in advertising publications, brand and digital media. So to recap, today we learned the chronological development of type families, the physical characteristics of type families, and some historical and present-day use of those type families. And the keywords for this lesson, once again, were black letter, old style, transitional, modern, Egyptian, and Bauhaus. I hope you've enjoyed this overview of the history of type. Be on the lookout throughout your day for various typefaces that you encounter, and ask yourself why particular typefaces were used and how they are used effectively in their respective medium. Thank you for joining me in this lesson. My name is Mario. See you next time.